3:15 hours, Olya Port, under floodlights, the world's most lethal cargo waited. It was unaware that every move had been charted, every second counted, and unseen hunters were already in position. On the 14th of August 2025, Astrakhan region. Port Olya 4 eased into Olya Pier under a field of white floodlights. Cranes swung overhead, cargo seals clicked, steel groaned as containers shifted. The whole operation looked routine, an industrial ballet in cold light and heavy metal. Inside the hull sat Iranian hardware, Shahid 136 suicide drones, artillery shells, and electronic systems, all worth $22 million. The shipment was deep inside Russian territory, covered by Buk M3 missiles, 96L6 radar, and coastal reconnaissance units sweeping the Caspian in wide, patient arcs. On paper, it was untouchable, but it wasn't. Ukrainian reconnaissance had tracked the vessel from Bandar Abbas, logging every heading, speed, and signal. The data fed a strike network that valued silence over noise and timing over chance. The attack clock was already running. At 03:25 hours, a LUTN 196 long-range strike drone UAV moved into position, carrying a 165-pound shaped charge designed to pierce reinforced steel. It wasn't flying alone. Two UJ-22 decoys led the way, 650 feet ahead at an altitude of 1,000 feet. Bright on radar, deliberately noisy, they existed to be shot. 3 drones advanced in formation, decoys in front, the killer behind. Modern UAV warfare had turned this method into art, one target to draw fire, a second to hold the door open, and the third to walk right through. Then at 03:30 hours, the decoys pulsed amplified signatures, forcing Russian crews to tilt their scans, recenter volumes, and tilt again. Each correction opened a narrow seam, and the strike drone slid deeper through it, silent and steady. On the pier, a foreman waved a loader forward. A truck eased beneath a suspended container. Security teams saw nothing unusual. The threat wasn't in what they saw, it was in when it would strike. By 03:40 hours, the first hard reaction hit. Interference spiked at 2.4 GHz, clawing at Decoy 2's link. A Lear 3 jammer on a Kamaz east of the port lit up the air. Nebo M radar stitched 2 faint tracks at 900 feet, barely visible sparks on a crowded screen. In less than 10 seconds, the grid jumped to level 2 alert. Red icons rippled across consoles. A duty officer collapsed deliberation into command. Activate Panzer S1. Defend Olya Port. Sirens cut through sleeping neighborhoods. Fire control radars spun. Missiles ripped into the night sky. Within 20 seconds, both decoys were gone. 2 fireballs over the Volga scattering fragments into dark water. Inside the combat cabin came brief relief and a crisp call. Targets destroyed, sector clear, reset scans. At 03:41 hours, but the trap was already sprung. Less than 1,500 feet south, the LUTN 196 banked 17 degrees, slipping through a seam where overlapping radar beams failed to meet. A ghost through cracks in steel. Panzer crews recalibrated, unaware that the real threat was now under 9.5 miles from the target. 4 minutes left. No solution, no picture. Then, at 03:46 hours, in an underground Ukrainian control station, a single beep confirmed what everyone already knew. The LUTN locked, the crew lead said quietly. Direction set. Port Olya 4, Olya Pier. Fractions now mattered. A late correction could shred the airframe. Operators moved with mechanical calm, every gesture rehearsed. On the main feed, the target filled the frame, a cargo ship 600 feet long, 90 feet wide, reinforced in layers of steel. On deck, special containers packed with over 50 Shahid 136 UAVs were already being unstacked. 4 reserve fuel tanks glimmered under floodlights. Groundcom antennas loomed, ready to synchronize the fleet once unloaded. Logistics never waits for a perfect sky. But tonight, the sky belonged to someone else. 2 minutes later, live telemetry flowed in from a friendly Gulf state. Russian radar signatures lit up in real time, gaps opened and closed like sliding doors. Su-24 strike aircraft dropped below 200 feet, hiding in the radar shadows of civilian flights. Dangerous, but invisible, long enough to reach launch coordinates. The mission was simple. neutralize air defenses, kill the logistics vessel, disrupt the weapons pipeline. At 3:53 hours, a TB-2 drone broadcast a false civilian transponder impersonating a Kazakh freight plane over neutral airspace. Russian operators paused to double-check flight plans, diluting their response window. The Caspian skies grew crowded, a deliberate smokescreen hiding the real threat sliding in from the south. The first storm shadow left the lead Su-24, diving instantly to sea-skimming altitude. Seconds later, a second missile was launched. The pilots broke hard, staying low, racing for Ukrainian-controlled skies. From here, it was physics, timing, and luck. Russian Buk M3 batteries picked up too fast low tracks over water. Operators fired. The first missile struck too low, missing and tearing through port infrastructure. The second chased electronic ghosts as the decoy flooded radar and broke every lock. By 0404 hours, the first storm shadow hit the pier next to Port Olya 4. Reinforced concrete shattered. Fuel lines tore open. Fire and steel scattered hundreds of meters, crippling cranes. Seconds later, the second missile slammed into the superstructure, blowing apart cargo holds, igniting ammunition, and turning the 13,200-ton ship into a floating inferno. A fireball climbed over 330 feet. Shock waves blasted across the port, shattering windows miles away. The Shahed containers went up, one by one, a chain of explosions feeding the next. Burning wings and twisted metal rained across 12.5 miles. Nearby neighborhoods evacuated under urgent orders. Russian command scrambled Su-30 fighters out of Volgograd. They found nothing. Ukrainian aircraft were already home. What remained was electromagnetic chaos over the Caspian, and Ukraine wasn't finished shaping it. At 4:12 hours, a Ukrainian cyber-electronic warfare cell in Azerbaijan triggered Phase 2, injecting false fleet reports into Russian coastal networks. Alerts about Phantom fast attack craft flooded screens, forcing patrols to redeploy and reconnaissance aircraft to scatter. The goal? Keep Russian forces chasing ghosts. Then, at 04:16 hours, Russian Naval HQ, fearing a larger strike from Turkmen waters, ordered countermeasure sweeps and temporarily cut encrypted links to air defense networks. The gap lasted 7 minutes, long enough for Ukrainian satellites to map every heat signature, fuel depots, missile crates, drone containers. The next blow came from below. Unmanned underwater vehicles moved months earlier through the Volga-Don Canal, powered up for one-night-only missions. At 4:31 hours, the first sub reached the outer anchorage, carrying a shaped charge for a Russian fuel tender 2 berths away. Divers were dispatched too late. The payload latched. 3 minutes later, a controlled blast ripped the hull, spilling thousands of gallons of fuel. Fires leapt across the water, overwhelming crews. A second sub moved inland, targeting a repair dock where a Russian corvette was waiting for deployment. The blast crippled the dock, ruptured dry dock systems, and sent panic through local command. Russian Fleet Command locked the port. Civilian traffic froze. Military police sealed approaches. Conflicting reports, drone swarms, sabotage alerts, and cyber intrusions collided in a single fog of war. Ukraine had achieved its objective. Pandemonium inside a hardened logistics chain. Moscow debated retaliation. Satellite feeds and intercepts were reviewed. One fact stood unshaken. No Ukrainian aircraft had crossed Russian airspace. Every strike launched beyond its borders. Every cyber action was masked by third parties. Escalation now meant risk layered with ambiguity and deniability. At 05:03 hours. By dawn, emergency crews contained Olya's fires. Cranes twisted into useless steel. Ships lay gutted. Fuel slicks stretched into open water. The damage ran into hundreds of millions. Russia's supply chain was broken, stalled, and exposed. Drone deliveries, artillery shipments, missile transfers. Frozen. A secure artery had become a bleeding wound. Through Ankara and Geneva, Ukrainian channels sent a coded diplomatic signal. Supply war, not total war. Ukraine's message was clear: stop supplying the front or face more strikes. A temporary stand-down followed. No retaliatory strikes, no air raids, only a quiet statement of an industrial accident near Astrakhan. The war moved back underground. Electronic probes, covert tracking, silent hunts for the invisible hand that turned Olya into a firestorm. Hours later, the Caspian lay eerily calm. Oil fires burned low. Patrol craft cut slow lines across black water. The war hadn't stopped. It had simply gone quiet, the silence heavy, alive, waiting. The clock reset. But the precedent stood. A secure Russian port, deep inside protected territory, had been struck without a single conventional sortie crossing its skies. A new phase of warfare had begun where timing, deception, and precision could unravel Russia's size and defenses. For both sides, the message was the same. The next move had to be as calculated as it was fast, because the clock was always ticking. This was just one battle in a war that's changing by the hour. Subscribe for more breakdowns and share your thoughts below.